Hey there, folks. I got a rather unusual case for you in this video. It's one I've been trying to dig into for a while now, and I recently had some breakthroughs when it comes to information. This is the disappearance of Maureen Anu Kelly. Initially, I didn't think this case seemed all that unusual, and by that I mean the question of how this could have happened. I would bet that this case catches most people off guard simply by hearing the circumstances of the disappearance, which we'll get into later and you'll see what I mean. That part is certainly a bit unusual, and I can understand why it piques some folks' interest. Aside from that, I look at the location in question, the Gifford Pinchot National Forest, and I just see a million ways that someone could disappear. So I have to admit I thought I had this case all figured out almost from the get-go, from the point where I learned a general overview of the story, and even into really digging deep on this thing. And then when I was just about done and I was putting this video together, I found something that I missed. Something that really changed the way I look at this case. It was a real twist. So I'll go over my investigation into this case as I usually do, and at the end you can decide for yourself if this new information changes anything for you. As with any case like this, all we can do is guess and theorize, but we do the best we can based on the evidence we have at hand. You'll have to tell me where the evidence leads you when all is said and done. But before we continue, I want to take a moment to thank Enigma for sponsoring this video. Enigma removes your sensitive and private details from the depths of the internet. Those kinds of things happen because your personal information is being gathered by faceless entities on a near constant basis. These data brokers then sell your information to anyone who has a use for it. Enigma works to scour the internet for your information and remove it from the hands of data brokers. But it also goes far beyond that by removing you from online directories, people search sites, and commercial databases. Of course, as the old saying goes, the internet is forever, and sometimes your information can hide in dark corners only to reappear again in the same places where it had previously been scrubbed. Well, Enigma is prepared for that situation as well. They will continue to routinely check these sites and issue takedown notices anytime your information reappears. This way, you can be sure that your private data is kept safe in perpetuity. But it doesn't stop there. Enigma also has their new custom removal feature. If you happen to find your information on some website that Enigma has not already found, you can send them a link and a dedicated privacy expert will handle it from there. Ultimately, Enigma will help reduce your risk of getting scammed, it will protect your privacy both online and off, and it will let you take back control of your personal data. Always remember, bad actors can't harm you if they can't find you. So take back your personal data with Enigma. Use code Enigma at the link below and get 60% off an annual plan. That's incogni.com/enigma. And thanks again to Enigma for sponsoring this video. Maureen Kelly was 19 years old in June of 2013, and she resided in Vancouver, Washington, right on the border with Oregon. Pretty much everyone who knew her called her Anu as the short form of her middle name, Leanuhea. She lived with her mother, Dee Kelly, father, Sean Kelly, as well as her younger brother, Michael. She also had two older brothers named Colt and Terrence who lived on their own. Maureen attended Hudson's Bay High School in Vancouver, though it appears she didn't graduate and later worked to get a GED. Maureen appeared to be the definition of a free spirit, at least judging by her Facebook posts and YouTube channel. She was clearly a very spiritual person, but she was also incredibly artistic. Most of her YouTube uploads consist of music-related videos, from playing the ukulele and singing to beatboxing. She often appears in these videos with her brother, Michael, and the two would create or cover music together. Other videos mostly consist of her acting quirky or goofy, which seem to just be part of her personality. Maureen was clearly very social, as evidenced by many of her Facebook posts, where she's often looking to hang out with people, talk, or go places. On Friday, June 7th, 2013, Maureen clearly had it on her heart that she wanted to go camping over the weekend. It appears to have been a spur-of-the-moment kind of thing because she posted on Facebook that day that she was looking for anyone who had a car that might want to join her. In the comments on the post, she adds that she is planning on going to the Cougar area a ways north of Vancouver, and hints that there are others who are already on board. It seems like the only thing that was needed was a driver. It's unclear how it all came together in the end, but ultimately the plan became a weekend camping trip in the Gifford Pinchot National Forest with her friends Daisy, Greg, and Angelina. The Gifford Pinchot encompasses over 1.3 million acres of land, as well as a large chunk of the Cascade Mountain Range. The selected camping spot was a little-known location called the Canyon Creek Campground. While this is a Forest Service camping area, it is not well maintained, nor are the roads that lead to it. The campsites are first come, first served, and they have no amenities other than a fire pit, possibly a picnic table, and a clearing to pitch a tent. When it comes to fresh water and bathrooms, you're on your own. It's uncertain how or why they selected this particular site, as it's not really popular due to its out-of-the-way nature. Beyond being remote with really bad roads, this area is very rugged. It's steep pretty much everywhere, and the forest canopy is dense with equally thick ground foliage. While there are gravel roads and the occasional bridge, this area still has the feeling of untouched wilderness. If you're here, you're a long way from cell phone reception, and you're a long way from any help. Before leaving that Friday, Maureen posted a final video to her YouTube channel, a simple freestyle music video with her brother, Michael. Maureen, Daisy, Greg, and Angelina arrived at the Canyon Creek Campground quite late on Friday night. They set up in campsite number 3 and settled in for the rest of the evening. Early on during the trip, Maureen mentioned that she planned on going on a spirit quest at some point, though she did not delve into great detail as to what this meant. The real fun began on Saturday, June 8th, as the group could enjoy the summer weather and the cold creek water. Daisy took photographs during the trip, most of which were of activities taking place around the creek. While there, Maureen began getting completely naked at some points. This was not something she normally did, at least according to her friends, and she would walk around, bathe, and jump in the river completely nude. Some photographs show her doing backflips into the water. Others show her and Angelina standing together by the shore. Another photo shows Greg standing on his own by the water's edge, looking perhaps a little uncomfortable. Some show Maureen and Angelina reaching towards the sky. In every photograph taken of Maureen, she is completely naked. At some point during the trip, but likely on Saturday, Maureen left the rest of her friends for an hour without saying where she was going or why, but she returned and things continued on as they had been. While there were other campers in the area, most of them did not see Maureen naked because each campsite has a natural brush barrier to keep them relatively private. Saturday came and went without incident. On Sunday, June 9th, as the camping trip was nearing its end, Maureen approached Angelina privately and handed her a note, telling her to give it to her mother, Dee Kelly. All weekend, Maureen had been continually talking about going on this spiritual quest, and she decided that now was the time for it to begin. She assured her friends that she would make it back to Vancouver eventually, whether it took her a few days or even a week. Her friends were unsure how serious Maureen actually was about what she was saying. They believed she would likely come back before dark, as the nights in these mountains would get very cold. Maureen once again removed all of her clothing except for a fanny pack. The pack was made of leather and contained a compass, lighter, pocket knife, and some hemp string, the barest of essential items. She then waded across Canyon Creek, heading in a northerly direction. All of Anu's friends could do nothing except watch as she successfully forded the creek and then walked off into the woods, disappearing amongst the dense green foliage. The time was around 4 to 5 p.m. Angelina, Daisy, and Greg continued to stay at the campground, still hoping that Maureen might return, hoping that this was a joke, or that it wasn't as serious as it appeared. But Maureen did not come back. As the sun started to fall behind the canyon ridges, the group decided it was time to head back to Vancouver and seek help. As soon as they reached an area where they regained cell service, Angelina called Maureen's older brother, Colt, and asked if he had heard from her. He told Angelina that he had not, and that he could not help search for his sister because he had to work in the morning. He advised them to not call Maureen's mother because she would only worry. Afterwards, Angelina made one more phone call, this time to her own mother, and she explained what had happened and asked what they should do. As soon as the trio made it back to Vancouver, they went to Angelina's house where they met up with her mother. Angelina's mom decided they should all go back to the campground and search for Maureen. Everyone except Daisy agreed to go, so they dropped her off at her home, and Angelina, Greg, and Angelina's mother traveled back into the Gifford Pinchot National Forest. By this time, it was well past dark, which made the prospect of searching much more difficult. Once they made it back to the original campsite, they all began yelling Maureen's name into the darkness and whistling loudly to try and get her attention, but they never received a response. Once they realized the futility of their attempts, Angelina's mother decided it was time to call 911. The Skamania County Sheriff's Office received a report of a missing or overdue person at 12:50 a.m. on June 10, 2013. The initial information that was provided to them was that a 19-year-old female Pacific Islander was going on a naked spiritual quest and taking only a fanny pack containing a lighter, compass, and pocket knife. She was reported to have left the Canyon Creek Campground at 5 p.m. the evening prior. County Dispatch reached out to a deputy and asked him to respond to the Canyon Creek Campground for a search and rescue mission. The deputy first called Angelina's mother by phone and asked for information. The mother said that her daughter, 2 friends, and Maureen Kelly had been camping all weekend, and Maureen decided to get undressed and go on a spirit quest. She said that she had been in the area helping her daughter search for Maureen, but had not found her anywhere. The Skamania County deputy then drove out to the Canyon Creek Campground and met with Angelina and Greg, who were already speaking with the Clark County Sheriff's deputy who had arrived on scene earlier once the initial call went out. Maureen's friends explained what had gone on during the camping trip and how Maureen had waded across the river naked. The deputy asked if Maureen had been taking any drugs while they were there, and Angelina said that she had not. She explained that Maureen was on probation and was being drug tested, and she was clean. The deputy took the note that Maureen had left for her mother and read it. It said, "Mama, I know you're probably freaking out, but please don't be scared. Understand that I am safe and protected. I am watched by many good spirits. This is a time where you and I both need to be strong. I have a destiny. I have known since I was young. Time is cutting close, and I can't play around anymore. It's time for me to take responsibility now. Please, have no worry, Mom. I'll be back sooner than you think. Remember who I am. Remember my strength, perseverance, and adaptability. I know you've always seen the hero in me, Mom. Remember that, and remember that I came from you. I wish I knew it was time before I left, but please trust in me, Mom. Trust God. It's Him and I in this together. I love you more than anything, Mom. Please believe in me. Life is going to be beautiful. Please let everyone else in the family know as well. I can tell you that it won't be any longer than a week. You are so beautiful, Mom. Thank you for having me and taking care of me. I won't let you down. It's only up from here. I love you. Anu." The note clearly states that it was Maureen's intention to return in about a week. The deputy asked Angelina if she thought it was a suicide note, but she didn't think so. She said that Anu was very happy. Angelina told the deputy that they had recently been reading a fortune teller type book and that the message Maureen kept getting from it was to follow her path. Beyond that, Maureen kept telling her friends that there were spirits speaking to her, and they were telling her to go. Maureen said that God would be the one to take her back to Vancouver. Angelina explained that Anu had waded through the river directly across from their campsite, and that she left behind all of her camping gear, clothes, and cell phone. By the time the deputy finished the interview, 2 searchers had arrived. This was still not enough, so he asked the Clark County deputy to find a cell signal and contact dispatch to request 20 to 30 ground searchers to arrive by 7 a.m. The deputy inspected the campsite where the group of friends had stayed, but there was nothing much left except some garbage on the ground. Shortly after, the deputy began checking the nearby Forest Road 54 for any signs of Anu. While driving, he spotted a red van with Washington plates parked alongside the rough road. The man inside was identified as David Gaudet of Washougal. He said he drove up to the area about 11:30 p.m. the night before, and that he had been fishing, filming, and riding his way to eastern Washington. He said that he did stop by a campground the night prior and spoke to Angelina's mother, who told him that a girl was missing in the area. David told the deputy that he would keep an eye out while he fishes. As searchers continued to trickle into the area, a report came back from 4 who were searching the North River bank. They found a bare footprint. Supposedly, they took photos and got the coordinates, but none appear in their case file. On Tuesday, June 11th, search teams were doing their best to scour the steep, rugged ridges that make up this entire region. This is a difficult area to have to search for anyone. 12 vehicle teams were brought in and tasked with driving the many rough forest roads in the area. They focused on roads 57, 54, 53, and 37. They were instructed to drive down all spur roads and to make themselves highly visible. The only thing these teams found was some photographs on the ground down by a spur road, but they didn't appear to have any relevance to their current search operation. To scour the ridges in the area, around 70 ground searchers were brought in, along with 9 search dog teams. Each was given a map with a specific area for that search team to cover. More technical search regions were assigned to the Volcano Mountain Rescue Team, Tacoma Mountain Rescue Team, and Portland Mountain Rescue Team. Due to the steep mountain terrain in the area, the search was slow going, and the ground teams were covering roughly 4 square miles. They determined that on average, the probability of detection for a missing person in this area was about 50% due to the dangerous ground. As the search progressed on June 11th, a detective was sent to interview Greg, one of Maureen's friends who was with her that weekend. Greg said he wasn't very familiar with Maureen, but he had met her a few times in the past. He described her as being really spiritual, and that she was taking off her clothes and talking about spiritual things throughout the trip. He gave the same account as everyone else when it came to Maureen's disappearance. He watched her wade through the water and disappear naked into the forest. He admitted that there was marijuana present during the trip, and he used it along with others in the group, all except for Maureen. He said that she never used any drugs while with them. After Greg, the detective sought out Daisy to get her perspective on what happened. The detective notes that her story was consistent with Greg's. Daisy also said that she had no knowledge of Maureen using any drugs. She admitted that she was the one who brought the marijuana on the camping trip, and she had enough for everyone, but Maureen never used it. Daisy said that it was odd for Maureen to take off her clothing the way she did. She said that Maureen was a spiritual person, but she has never seen her take her clothes off until this trip. She recalled that at one point, Maureen offered to make food for everyone, and they insisted if she was going to cook for them, then she should put on some clothing first. She did so, and then later removed them again. Eventually, Maureen began talking about hearing voices, and became insistent on going on her spiritual journey. Later on Sunday, while she was packing up to leave the campsite, Daisy saw Maureen leaving wearing only a fanny pack. She saw her crossing the creek, but turned away when she was halfway across so that she could continue packing. She said they waited for hours afterwards, but Maureen never returned. They then drove to an area with cell service and called Maureen's brother, Colt. After that, Daisy had to go home, but she had heard that Angelina returned to the area with her mother to search, and that police were eventually called. A follow-up interview was later done with Daisy, wherein the detectives asked for access to her cell phone. They wanted to view her text messages and also the photographs that Daisy had taken while at the campground. These were the photographs shown earlier in the video. On June 18th, Maureen's family gave detectives access to her Facebook profile. They were able to sign in and view her private messages, but they saw nothing suspicious. The only thing they made note of were messages between Maureen and some unknown individuals that discussed buying and selling mushrooms. While there, detectives spoke with Maureen's mother, Dee Kelly, about obtaining family DNA samples. That way, any remains that are found in the future could be compared to samples taken from the family. On June 19th, detectives took possession of Maureen's cell phone and had it sent off to the FBI for processing. Once they had access to the phone, they looked for anything suspicious in her messages and photos, but nothing was found. Maureen took no photographs during her time at Canyon Creek. Well over a week into the investigation, on June 21st, detectives spoke with a member of the U.S. Forest Service named Michael. His job is to monitor the Canyon Creek Campground. Michael recalled checking the campsites on the weekend that Maureen disappeared. He said that one group had numerous cars and about 9 people who were being very loud, and the other groups were all quiet. Michael supplied detectives with the pay slips from that weekend, but there were only 2. Honestly, I'm a bit surprised that anyone filled out a pay slip for this location. Michael said that he thought the large group was responsible for one of the slips, and they settled in campsite number 8. The second slip didn't write down their campsite number. Both pay slips had license plate numbers written on them which came back to individuals living in Vancouver, Washington. Detectives pulled the names of these people and reached out to them. The first was a man named Troy and his wife. When they were contacted by phone, they said that they had seen the disappearance reported on the news and were concerned for Maureen. They did recall seeing her group at the campground and said they seemed friendly. However, they couldn't remember anything significant and had no idea what happened to Maureen. The other payslip came back to a man named Cody and his fiancée, Brittany. Detectives were able to make contact with Brittany, who said that she was in the area with Cody that weekend, and she saw Maureen's group only briefly as they were often down by the creek. She said that once she saw the incident reported on the news, she realized that she actually went to high school with Maureen. But when she saw her at the campground, she didn't recognize her due to a different hairstyle. Brittany gave the detective Cody's phone number and said that he had a friend who was in a larger group campsite and they might be worth tracking down. Next, the detective made contact with Cody, but he also did not have any relevant information other than that he noticed Maureen's group was there. He said he had a friend named Dakota who was in a campsite with a much larger group, so Cody provided Dakota's phone number to the detective. When Dakota was reached, he said that he was camping with a large group that weekend, and that they kept to themselves and did not interact with any other campsites. He said that they had no interaction with Maureen and had no information relevant to her disappearance. On June 26th, detectives met with the Kelly family at their request. The family brought up concerns they had about Wiccan activity that Maureen had been partaking in prior to her disappearance. Her aunt showed Maureen's room to detectives, and specifically had them look at some designs and statements written on her bedroom wall. She also pointed out items on the desk in the room, things like incense, rocks, and a metal sun symbol in a picture frame. The aunt said that they were unaware of the details of Maureen's faith, but became concerned because after researching Wiccan things on the internet, they came across the idea of doing a spirit quest in the woods. Detectives were given Maureen's journals, which contained miscellaneous writings about God. Sometimes there was mention of a day of change and a mission, but none of the writings were dated. At this point, the investigation stalled. The ground search had failed, and detectives had discovered no new information or leads. Maureen Anu Kelly's case remains open with the Skamania County Sheriff's Office. Now, years after the initial push to find Maureen, the Sheriff's Office has continued receiving random tips from the public. Most of them turned out to be nothing. Just good people seeing someone who they think might be Maureen, but after investigation it's discovered they were mistaken. One that may be worth mentioning came on in March 5th of 2023. At this point, she had been missing for 8 years. The reporting party claimed to be a friend of Maureen's. She was a woman named Natalia. She said that an anonymous person on Facebook, going by the handle Tava Brash, had sent her a pornographic video claiming that Maureen was doing this. Natalia believed the woman in the video looked like Maureen, and she believed that she had been abducted and was being used for prostitution. Natalia said that she knew Maureen from Hudson's Bay High School, but she had not seen her since. She showed detectives the Facebook messages she received from this mysterious account. There are no pictures of the messages in the case file, but the messages are documented in the report. Tava Brash says, Anu Kelly, aka Maureen. Remember her? Speak up if you do. Natalia responds, how could I ever forget Anu? She has always been in my heart. Speak up if you do. Do you know where she is? Tava Brash responds, go message her brother and he'll tell you exactly what I told him. Brash then sent a short video of a male and female engaged in a sex act, and Natalia believed that it might be Maureen in the video. After sending the video, he said, Anu is doing that. Natalia asks, how do we get her out of this situation? Brash responds, you can't. She doesn't want to anyway. Natalia says, does not sound like Anu unless you have her on drugs or have brainwashed her over the course of 9 years. If it's money you want for her safe release, my family is very wealthy. Brash says, LOL. Natalia says, to be honest, the only reason I thought you specifically reached out to me is because you found out my family is wealthy, and I am surprised you haven't asked for ransom. Unless you are just trying to mess with everyone in Anu's life. The conversation ends there. After it occurred, Natalia reached out to Maureen's brother, Michael, but he never got back to her. The detective told her that this information may be true, but it also could be a scam or someone with false information trying to cause trouble. When the detective viewed the video that was sent, he notes that it never actually shows the face of the female involved. It seems like the detective made no attempts at finding out the identity of Tava Brash. This is not entirely surprising, as this individual never supplied any unique information or anything at all, really. And there are a lot of people out there who do messed up things like this. If somebody had abducted Maureen, it seems strange that the perpetrators would contact a random acquaintance from high school. Either way, there have been no further developments as it relates to this tip. And that is where the investigation ends in the Skamania case file. Now, you might have already come up with a determination of what fate befell Maureen Anu Kelly. By this point, I had a few thoughts myself, but one thing I really wanted to do was go out to this area and see the terrain firsthand. If Maureen did venture out naked and barefoot in this kind of terrain, I wouldn't expect her to get very far, especially since she left near dark. Once the sun goes down behind those ridges, it would start to get cold. If she was limited in how far she could go, then why could almost 100 searchers and 9 dog teams not find her? It's a question worth asking. So in the summer of 2025, I traveled out to the Gifford Pinchot National Forest. The plan was to take Road 54 to the Canyon Creek Campground. It wasn't the route I originally selected, but it was one a ranger recommended to me if I was going to try it. And let me just say, if he thought this was the easy route, I'd hate to see what the other ones look like. Hey there, folks. Well, right now I'm at the Canyon Creek Campground. Or I should say, I think I am. I might just be close to it. It's kind of hard to tell because there's campsites kind of along the Canyon Creek here, and I can't tell if it's actually part of a campground with multiple spots or if they're just kind of interspersed along the road in this section. So I'm going to do a little walking around to figure that out and see if I can find the exact spot where Maureen Anu Kelly disappeared. And but I know I'm in this exact area. I mean, wherever her campsite was, I doubt it's 100 yards from where I'm standing. Again, I'm going to do a little looking around and we'll get that verified. The road down here sucks. I would not recommend anyone coming down here unless you have a four-wheel drive vehicle with high clearance. The roads were something kind of awful. Not the worst I've ever been on, but I mean, it's not a lot of fun. You're moving 5 miles an hour and you're just dipping and dodging some deep, deep potholes. A few times I thought I might scrape the ground, but we didn't, so good to go for now. Anyway, Canyon Creek right down here below. Now I know that Anu was on the south side where I'm standing, and she crossed that creek going to the other side. Already I can see some weird problems with this whole story. I mean, I'm not saying it's not true, but we're in a canyon, and to cross the creek and then start climbing up the other side naked with no shoes, I just don't know how you'd get very far. But that's just kind of my early thoughts. So let's keep going and check this out. I've got a lot to look at in this area, so let's dive into it a bit. All right, so I've successfully found the campground. It was a bit further up. I was able to walk there. I can't identify which site Anu Kelly was actually staying at because there's no numbers on anything. This whole place is like not well kept. There's garbage everywhere, evidence of people shooting at trees. You know, I think a lot of lawless behavior happens down here, if you know what I mean. But I'm up near the creek and right next to one of the campsites. It's hard to, I don't have the pictures that were taken on scene with me right now, so I can't for sure say that this is the area they were, but I mean, I'm within 100 feet at this point. So let's look across the river and see if it makes sense that she would have crossed here naked and been able to climb up the other side. Kind of doubtful. It might be possible, but gosh, there's so much brush over there. I don't know how she would have done that. I mean, it seems like it would be terribly uncomfortable to do, and you wouldn't be able to get far just out of sheer discomfort of wandering through brush that is so thick that it's scraping and scratching you. I mean, even the area by the campground is covered in huckleberries and other bushes and whatnot. So, I don't get it. This is a very strange case. You'd think she'd be able to be found because she couldn't get very far, but she's never been found. We're 12 years on and nothing. And frankly, I'd be surprised if she was able to get to the other side and then even climb up to a road. I don't really have much knowledge of how fit she was, but doing that naked seems like it would be a very difficult thing to do. Another point to note that this whole area seems empty right now. I've seen no evidence of campers so far. Like I said, a lot of garbage and people seem to have left a lot of things lying around, but no tents or cars so far. And we're in mid-August right now, so probably peak time to have people camp around here. Nothing. Makes me wonder how they selected this site to begin with, because, you know, if you wanted to camp somewhere, I don't know how you'd come up with Canyon Creek Campground, because you can't even find it on most maps. I don't believe it's on Google Maps. I don't believe it's on Apple Maps. At least I couldn't find it. I basically had to put a pin in this location to try and even get near it. And there's no reservations at this campsite either. It's basically, you arrive here and if you can find a spot, you got yourself a spot. And hopefully there's one when you get here. And by the looks of it, nobody uses this area very much, so maybe it's not too hard to find a spot. At least not right now. If there's supposedly 8 spots here, 8 spots are open as far as I can tell. I mean, it's kind of a creepy place. I don't know how to really... That's a tough thing to gauge, and I don't know why that kind of thing happens sometimes when you're in an area and just like, oh, that's kind of creepy. I don't know. It's very secluded. Not a lot of people around. Very shady. Not getting a lot of sun in here. It's quiet, except for the river. No birds chirping. It's kind of an odd place. You know, it gives you one of those odd feelings. Well, if I had to guess or bet, and I'm not much of a betting man, but I'd say this is actually the area where they took those photographs. I'll have to throw up those pictures to see if I'm right or not. It looks like it could be that area. You know, she was photographed by her friends here, naked and jumping into the river. They said that she was continuously taking her clothes off the entire time they were here, and that was unusual behavior. So, but this kind of looks like that area. So now that we're at the spot, or the spot where I presume she went across, probably at one of the shallower ends over here, the question is, what does the other side look like yet again? I can tell you without a doubt, that would be a very difficult climb. Now the other part of that might be that she climbed up that naked, barefoot, and it is just, I mean, it's a crawl at best. When searchers got here, I don't know how well they could search this area, because the only way you're going to really search this area well is by rappelling down from the top or something. And when I was reading about it, it seems like they did a lot of driving along the roads in hopes that she made it to a road or something. I didn't hear or see a lot of them actually climbing on these hillsides. There was reports of some of them doing that, and they said that it was near impossible to do, to search these ridges in this canyon, and that they figured it, you know, chances of finding her in these areas were 50%, possibly worse. So it very well could be that she decided to climb up one of these steep ridges here, just like right across from the creek, and died while doing that. I've done a few cases on this channel where when you're trying to develop theories about what happened, spirit quest sometimes comes up. You know, someone wandering off into the woods in hopes of having some sort of spiritual experience. For once, we know that is what happened here. She wrote a note to her mom. She told her friends that she was going out here on some 4 to 5 day spirit journey, and that God or someone had been speaking to her in her head, presumably, and telling her that she needed to do this. So this is the first time I've legit encountered that. And again, it seems like mental illness would be at play with that, given that she went out naked and with minimal supplies. Doubtful she could have lasted long. I bet it gets pretty cold here in the canyon at night. But in terms of cause, it's quite clear. We know exactly why she did what she did. We just don't know where she went and what happened. Probably hypothermia or something, and you know, she died of exposure. But the fact that her body was never found is slightly disturbing. But given the terrain in this area, it might make sense in the end. Behind me, you're looking at one reason why it just doesn't make sense if you're going to pick this area to go on your spirit quest. You're in a canyon, and the canyon walls are steep. Are they climbable? Yeah, but you're going to be like on all fours trying to get up there. It's such a strange place to pick. I really wish I knew why they picked this area. If it was Anu who picked it, or if it was her friends. If she'd had any planning at all or thought that went into this. I mean, I don't think I could climb up there very well. And I have the benefit of wearing hiking boots right now. I just don't get it. Well, I've done a lot more hiking here than I initially anticipated. Worked up quite a sweat. A lot of these trails in the area that you'll see on video, they're not really marked. They just kind of end suddenly, or they are blocked off by, I don't know, stuff that's fallen on them. I don't know where they go ultimately, probably just down to the creek in different ways. I've almost slipped and fallen at least once, so I take that as a bad omen because that doesn't usually happen to me. But this whole area, I don't know, I get weird vibes from it. Again, hard to say why. Kind of just a eerie place. You know, even when the sun was out, it doesn't really make it down here very well because we're in a canyon, hence the name Canyon Creek. The creek itself is quite beautiful, crystal clear, probably fun to swim in. But out of all the choices you have in southern Washington or even in the Gifford Pinchot National Forest, I don't know why someone would pick this area. I just don't. One thing I've noticed walking around here quite a bit is that a ton of stuff just has bullet holes in it. Like some rednecks just come down here and start shooting at things. And that might be part of the eeriness of it, you know, some kind of weird deliverance kind of vibe or something, you know? Rednecks with guns shooting at everything. And I got nothing against rednecks. Sometimes I even consider myself one. So, nothing against you. I'm just saying, I don't really come down to national forests and just start shooting at signs and trees and things. I'm sure it's fun, but I'm not really for that. All right, so I've spent quite a bit of time just hiking around here. I threw the drone up, spent a lot of time looking around with the drone. You know, on the opposite side of the creek, you see a lot of you know, I saw like a towel just hanging from a log. Nobody around. I haven't seen anybody really since I've been here, except right when I got here, I encountered some bikers who told me which way to go to get to Canyon Creek Campground, and that's pretty much it. Nobody drive through. Seems like a pretty dead area, really. But there's a lot of signs of people. So garbage, I would say, all over the place. I don't know if it was like that back 12 years ago when Anu Kelly was here. You know, a lot can change in that time. These roads could be worse. Maybe it was easier to get down here. Who knows? Could be any number of things, really. But I don't know. This whole case just has me thinking that this was a girl who was mentally ill. She thought she had been tasked by God to go on some spirit quest, and then she just wandered naked out into the woods. Now, of course, as we probably already covered in the video by this point, there was some things later on that unconfirmed rumors that she had been picked up and put into prostitution or something. I'm not going to say that's not possible. I just don't know how she would get out of here. When I was using the drone, I could see that there is definitely a road above the ridge that she was going to be climbing as she crossed the creek. Now, so it is possible she might have been able to climb that really steep ridge and get to that road, and then who knows what she would have done. But if she was picked up and then sold into prostitution, the idea would be that, I don't know, some guy, perhaps a bad guy, picked her up, and then that happened. Or I guess maybe a good person picked her up and dropped her off in some town, and then she got into some kind of terrible stuff. It's hard to make that one fit, how she could go from being in the middle of nowhere to suddenly being in some sort of prostitution, slavery type of thing. I don't know how that one really fits. But you'd think if anyone, well, maybe not anyone, but any good person who picked up a naked woman on the side of the road, especially in this area, you'd think they would tell the police that at some point, because that's just screaming mental illness. And we don't have that here. So the only way I can see that alternate theory working is if, you know, a bad guy of some kind was around here, and, you know, there probably is that type of person driving through here, judging by all the bullet holes and everything and all that kind of thing. So I guess that is a possibility, though I would categorize it as a remote possibility. In my opinion, I think her remains are probably on a really steep hillside somewhere still in this canyon, because I don't think she would get very far, not being naked without any shoes on. And I think it would be really difficult to find her body. Even for, canines, I don't know how well they would do on these steep hillsides, these steep ridges. I just, the canine and handler would have a tough time tracking anything on these hillsides. So I think the terrain is probably what prevented the search from having any sort of success, because we're dealing with thick foliage. I mean, you could be staring right at her and not know it, because there's so many ferns and bushes and everything. That's kind of the way I'm leaning on this. Obviously the stranger possibilities are still possible, though I think less likely. I think she was just having some sort of episode. And if you've been watching this channel long enough, you realize that that kind of happens a lot in these types of cases when somebody goes missing, especially out in remote areas. And mental illness gets involved, and people have a way of making themselves disappear. And in the end, we know that was her ultimate goal. In a way, she wanted to basically get herself lost. It's kind of what a spirit quest is, in a way. And instead it got her killed, I would say. But I don't know, there's much more to see here. Been to the campground. I've been all around, up and down this area, drone and on foot. The only thing I didn't do was cross that creek physically on foot. Didn't bring any boots on this trip, so I wasn't going to try it. And I have yet to find a good way down on the north side. I have not found a way to do that. And I bet the search and rescue folks had a similar issue when trying to search the north ridge of Canyon Creek. But in a way, this might just be an open and shut type of case. Although if she did get picked up and abducted, essentially, and still alive, that would be a terrible outcome. And let's hope that's not the case. Let's hope she's resting easy wherever she is right now. But I'm gonna get out of here. Despite being in this area for a while now, the creepiness is still here. I can't explain it. It's just one of those places. I wouldn't come back here, and I wouldn't camp around here. Just my feeling, Maybe on other days it feels different. You never know. Anyway, let's keep moving. So it really did look like this was a simple case of someone walking off into dangerous wilderness and dying from exposure. The root cause I would categorize as mental illness, because it's quite obvious that what Maureen was planning would ultimately lead to her death. There's just no way you're going to survive for up to 7 days out here while you're naked, even if you have a knife, a lighter, and all the rest. You would think at some point Maureen would have sought help along one of the many forest roads snaking across the Gifford Pinchot. I mean, how long could she endure this wilderness before she got tired of getting scratched up by brambles, bitten by insects, or stepping on sharp rocks and sticks? How long before she got tired of the cold? If you're moving around in this area, you're likely going to hit a forest road at some point, and then you either find help or you die trying. Who knows, maybe she did get picked up and it was an abduction. You can't rule it out. But since there does seem to be some mental illness at play, her behavior becomes a bit more difficult to predict. She could easily have died anywhere along these steep ridges. At least, that was what I initially thought. It kind of seemed like this was case closed for this one. And then I discovered there was something that I had overlooked. If you've watched this channel long enough, then you'll know I often talk about the absolute mess that is clawing case files from the grasp of local police and sheriff's offices. Well, that happened again here, but I won't go into great detail because most of you have heard it all before. What I want to mention is that it is so common to get incomplete records. It's something that happens like 99% of the time, I'd say. For example, I know that detectives recorded every interview they did with Angelina, Greg, and Daisy, but none of those audio files were given to me. Instead, they gave me audio interviews with a few random people who called Skamania County to give them tips. None of these calls were actually documented in written form in the case file. They only exist as audio recordings. I didn't even bother to listen to them initially because if an interview contains important information, it's almost always documented in a report and added to the case file. And this line of thinking actually holds true for almost all of these audio files. A couple of these calls were just people who knew a suspicious person who may or may not have been in the vicinity. There really wasn't anything solid there, like at all. It was just people saying, I encountered a weird guy many miles away who mentioned Canyon Creek or mentioned the search for Maureen. There was nothing actionable in them. The other two files were actual witnesses who were in and around the Canyon Creek Campground the weekend that Maureen disappeared. Again, this is rather surprising because these statements were never written down by investigators. One of these calls I found particularly interesting, the other much less so, but it still provides some timeline information. I'll go over both of them. The first witness, and less important one, was a fellow named Jacob who was at the Canyon Creek Campground the same weekend as Maureen and her friends. He said that he was there with 4 other people, and that Saturday he saw Maureen walking the camp loop with 2 of her friends and also a dog. On Sunday, when he was leaving, he noticed that the only group left in the campground was Maureen's. He said he left early in the afternoon. If he's correct, that would mean that when his group left, Maureen had still not crossed the river and disappeared, which occurred around 4 to 5 p.m. on this day. The second and more important witness is a woman named Lisa. She and her husband were in the area that Sunday because there's a fishing spot that they like at the campground. Lisa said they were approaching the campground in their vehicle around 4:30 p.m., and they heard some really loud men partying at one of the campsites. They wanted to be sure that their favorite fishing spot was open, so Lisa's husband went down there to check. When he got there, her husband said that he saw 3 men crossing the creek to the north side and being very loud. He then returned to his wife and told her that the men were gone and the fishing spot was open. So both Lisa and her husband went down to the campground to do their fishing. Lisa said that they heard the men being loud across the creek until 5:05 p.m. She was very certain of this because she recalled checking the time. A little later, they heard some gunshots go off, but they thought very little of it because it wasn't uncommon in this remote area. At the time, Lisa did think it was odd that she stopped hearing the men because they had been very loud. By 9:15 p.m., Lisa said that the campground was a ghost town and all the campsites were empty. As Lisa and her husband left and started driving back on the road, they saw a car heading towards the campground. She said the time was around 9:30 to 9:40 p.m., and she thought it was strange to see a car heading towards the campground so late on a Sunday. While far from certain, it is likely that this was Angelina's mom, Angelina, and Greg returning to the campground to continue their search. Here are some portions of the audio of this interview.
The first pullout, that's where we pulled into, we have 4 kids, and we were getting everybody ready, and we heard, it sounded like approximately 3 adult men, screaming and definitely having a rowdy time down there.
Okay.
And so my husband was concerned that what they were doing, that they were down there with the kids, So he went down to check it out first to make sure that they weren't in the fishing spot that we were going to go to.
Uh-huh.
So when we went down there, I was stayed up there with the kids, and there was I didn't see anybody. He went down and he saw men crossing the river.
Okay.
And he came back up and said, well, they crossed the river, so that would be the opposite side of which we were going to be fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, so let's go down there. After we started going down there, so again, we got there at approximately 4:30 to 4:40, no later.
Okay.
And from that time, we heard them until we started walking down the trail towards the river. And that was, I looked at my clock, that was 5:05. We could still hear them.
That's okay.
At any rate, 5:05, we stopped hearing them completely.
Okay.
And we went down, we did our fishing, we heard some gunshots, but, that's not uncommon.
Right.
Again, I kind of thought it was odd that we hadn't heard them, because they were partying hard, it sounded like,
Okay.
So anyways, I hadn't heard anything. We went back up at 8:30. We were back out of our van. It took us 45 minutes to get everything unloaded, the fishing stuff, the kids. At 9:15, we traveled into the campsite, and it was a ghost town, because my husband and I we were laughing, saying, "Wow, this is like a ghost town in here. Just nobody's here."
Mm-hmm.
There was we were going very slow. There wasn't any garbage on the floor. I saw one red frisbee, but at any rate, there wasn't anybody there at all.
Mm-hmm.
We drove through, and at about 9:20, I'd say we left there, but at about 9:30, 9:40, there was one car that passed us. We were going pretty slow, because at any rate, we were traveling very slowly. There was a car that passed us on the way up, odd because it was already dark,
mm-hmm.
And it was a older car, an older model car. It was a regular car, but it was just, real fast. And we thought, wow, that's kind of weird. It's dark, and they're going up there, and nobody's camping. At any rate, there was that.
Okay.
Okay, so to me, this is probably the most important witness statement in this entire case, aside from Maureen's friends. It's also the most detailed because Lisa made a note of the time often, something few witnesses do. Let's look at the timeline on Sunday. A witness named Jacob said that he left in the early afternoon, and by that time Maureen's group was the only one left. Of course, this would still be at least a couple hours before she disappeared. Let's say Jacob left at 1 p.m. Sometime between then and 4 p.m., it sounds like another group of guys showed up. This group was loud and obnoxious. Sometime between 4 and 5 p.m., though likely it was closer to 4, Maureen crosses the river naked and disappears into the tree line on the north side. Her friends provided no additional information of what might have gone on at the campground after she did this, except to say that they sat around waiting for her for a bit. Then we have Lisa and her husband. They show up around 4:30 p.m. and check on their favorite fishing spot. It is likely that Maureen had just disappeared. The couple hear a group of guys down in the campground and they're being loud. The husband goes to check it out and he sees 3 men crossing the river to the north side. Again, this is within the same hour time frame that Maureen disappeared. Obviously, Lisa's husband didn't know that anything odd was going on, so he went back to his wife and said their fishing spot was open. So the couple go down to the creek. They can't see the loud men anymore, but they can hear them. However, they stop making noise around 5:05 p.m. Again, this is all pretty much happening within the same hour that Maureen disappeared. Sometime later, Lisa and her husband hear gunshots, and then later on from there, they leave around 9:15 p.m. I'm sorry, but that timeline is sending off crazy red flags to me. What's really frustrating is that I don't know that Skamania County ever really investigated what Lisa said here. Nowhere in their case file is this statement even documented. I don't think they ever even bothered to interview Lisa's husband. It's really quite mind-boggling to me because you have Maureen completely naked and crossing the creek. She disappears, then less than an hour later, maybe even sooner, it could have been 5 minutes later, and you have a group of 3 guys, they're loud and obnoxious, possibly drunk, who knows, and they cross the river to the north side and disappear into the woods. Shortly after that, they stop being loud, and after that, some gunshots are heard. If we are to organize the best leads in this case, that would be the best lead. It really gives me a bit of pause in my analysis on this case because before I thought we were just dealing with the case of a naked woman in the woods in the middle of nowhere. But now we can potentially place 3 rowdy guys who were possibly armed in the exact same location as this naked woman. That needs to be considered and it should have been investigated further. I mean, what made these guys want to cross the river? When I was there, I had no interest in attempting it. The water is freezing cold even during the height of summer. It's moving pretty fast, and it's deep in places where you might not expect it. Unless you have a good reason, why bother attempting it? There's a bridge a short distance to the west. What made those guys want to wade across that creek at that specific time? Or was it just a coincidence? Did they see a naked girl who crossed it just moments before? It seems so strange to me that this witness statement is less than an afterthought in this investigation. Now, I have a lot of questions, and the investigators should have had a lot of new questions too. If I was them, I would have gone back to Daisy, Greg, and Angelina to re-interview them. I would ask them specifically if they saw these men cross the river after Maureen began her spirit quest. It's possible they didn't. I mean, initially, they didn't think anything of this situation. They seemed to think that it's Maureen. She's a bit of a wild girl. She'll cross the river, step on a few sharp rocks, or get scratched up by a few sticker bushes, and she'll be back within an hour, just like she did earlier in the trip. I mean, there's no comfort to be found walking around naked in this area, so I imagine they might not have been keeping an eye on the creek the whole time. They were probably focused on packing up or talking or whatever, and only after a significant amount of time passed did they start to worry and start watching the tree line on the north side of the river. That could be the explanation as to why they never reported seeing these men crossing the river after Maureen. But we have a separate witness, one who did a good job of keeping track of time, saying that there were 3 loud and obnoxious guys crossing very soon after Maureen did. They should have met with Lisa and her husband and done in-depth interviews with both. Did you see if these guys had a car? Were they hanging out in a particular campsite? Detectives really should have dug into the details on this. Beyond that, they should have re-interviewed all the other known campers with a focus on this specific group of guys. Now, 13 years on from this disappearance, that becomes a much more difficult thing to do. People have bad enough memories as it is, and more than a decade doesn't help anything. I just think that more could have been done here. Maureen's family was obviously greatly affected by this, and continue to be affected to this very day. I suppose that goes without saying, but if you look at their Facebook pages, many of them still have photographs of Maureen posted front and center. The sheriff has come out in this case and publicly said that they don't suspect any foul play, and I can kind of understand that because there's no hard evidence of anything. Having 3 guys cross the river after Maureen is not definitive evidence that they were involved in her disappearance. They could be totally innocent, but all possible avenues of investigation should have been exhausted before you rule anything out. As I've repeated many times in this video, this region is rugged and unforgiving. A naked person could easily die out here and their body may never be found due to the dense foliage. The question that I keep asking myself is how far could she really go in a canyon while naked with no shoes on? And I keep thinking, probably not that far. And I grant you there are exceptions to everything. Still, those are factors that severely limit the distance a person can go. Yet, not a trace was found. But if you take that one witness statement and combine it with the facts that we do know, it creates a big question. What happens when 3 rowdy guys meet a naked girl in the forest? Well, obviously outcomes vary, and it entirely depends on the character of those men. But for men of poor moral character, for evil men, it presents a rare type of crime of opportunity. This area is remote. There's no cell phone reception. There's no calling for help. Chances are nobody will hear you. You would hope that if these men did encounter Maureen in such a vulnerable state, that they didn't do the unthinkable. But this is the real world and terrible things happen. I don't know that there is much that can be done at this stage of the case. Let's just hope that one day someone, a hunter or hiker or fisherman, finds some remains which can provide a little bit of closure. If that does occur, there's a minute possibility that we may also discover if she died on her own terms or someone else's. Until next time, thanks for watching.